Hello, I'm going to be reading chapter 12 of The Little People today. Just before I do that, I asked a few questions about chapter 11. And the questions were, question number 1, what does Pod climb up? Question number 2, what did Pod push down to Arrietty from the desk? And number 3, why was Mrs. Driver cross with the boy? So, how did he get on with the questions? The answers were Pod climbed up a chair. He was to climb up a chair because chairs seem like mountains to the borrowers, don't they? And then he pushes down some blotting paper. That's what old-fashioned people used to use when they wrote a letter, because it was written in ink, and they had to put the blotting paper on the top. And Homily uses the blotting paper for a carpet. She needed some new. And when Arrietty was listening under the floorboards, Mrs. Driver was being cross about the boy, and she said he'd been looking under the mat again. So Arrietty knows he's been looking for her letter that she pushed under the mat. Okay. So yeah, last time Arrietty and Pod, they go borrowing together. They're looking for blotting paper, and she's written a letter that she wants the boy to take to the Badgerset, where Uncle Henry and Aunt Loopy live. Okay, so chapter 12. Homily was ironing, bending and banging and pushing the hair back out of her eyes. Excuse me. All round the room, underclothes hung, airing on safety pins, which Homily used like coat hangers. Just have a quick drink. What happened? Asked Homily. Did you fall over? Yes, said Arrietty, moving quietly into her place beside the fire. How's the feeling coming on? Oh, I don't know, said Arrietty. She clasped her knees and laid her chin on them. Where's your knitting? Asked Homily. I don't know what's come over you lately. Always idle. You don't feel seedy, do you? Oh, exclaimed Arrietty, let me be. And Homily, for once, was silent. It's the spring, she told herself. Used to take me like that sometimes at her age. I must see that boy, Arrietty was thinking, staring blindly into the fire. I must hear what happened. I must hear if they're all right. I don't want us to die out. I don't want to be the last borrower. I don't want. And here Arrietty dropped her face onto her knees. To live for ever and ever like this, in the dark, under the floor. No good getting supper, said Homily, breaking the silence. Your father's gone borrowing. To her room. And you know what that means. No, Arrietty raised her head. She was hardly listening. What does it mean? That he won't be back, said Homily sharply, for a good hour and a half. He likes it up there, gossiping with her and poking about on the dressing table. It's safe enough once that boy's in bed. Not that there's anything we want special, she went on. It's just these new shelves he's made. They look kind of bare, he says, and he says, just pick up a little something. Arrietty suddenly was sitting bolt upright. A thought had struck her, leaving her breathless and a little shaky at the knees. A good hour and a half, her mother had said, and the gates would be open. Where are you going? Asked Homily as Arrietty moved towards the door. Just along to the storeroom, said Arrietty, shading with one hand her candle from the draught. I won't be long. Now don't you untidy anything, Homily called out after her, and be careful of that light. As Arrietty went down the passage, she thought, it is true, I am going to the storerooms to find another hat pin, and if I do find a hat pin and a piece of string, I still won't be long, because I'll have to get back before Papa. And I'm doing it for their sakes, she told herself doggedly, and one day they'll thank me. All the same, she felt a little guilty. Artful, that's what Mrs. Driver would say she was. There was a hat pin, one with a bar for a top, and she tied a piece of string very firmly, twisting it back and forth like a figure of 8. The gates were open, and she left the candle in the middle of the passage where it could come to no harm, just by the hole by the clock. The great hall, when she climbed out into it, was dim with shadows. A single gas jet turned low made a pool of light beside the locked front door, and another faintly flickered on the landing halfway up the stairs. The ceiling sprang away into height and darkness, and all around was space. The night nursery, she knew, was at the end of the upstairs passage, and the boy would be in bed. Her mother had just said so. Arrietty had watched her father use his pin on the chair, and single stairs in comparison were easier. There was a kind of rhythm to it after a while, a throw, a pull, a scramble, and an upward swing. The stairs glinted coldly, but the pile of the carpet seemed soft and warm and delicious to fall back on. On the half landing she paused to get her breath. She did not mind the semi-darkness. She lived in darkness. She was at home in it, and at a time like this it made her feel safe. On the upper landing she saw an open door and a great square of golden light, which, like a barrier, lay across the passage. I've got to pass through that, Arrietty told herself, trying to be brave. He heard voices chatting in the bedroom. No, said another voice, rather absent-mindedly. That's my father, Arrietty realised with a start. My father, talking to Great-aunt Sophie. Or rather, Great-aunt Sophie talking to my father, and he's just listening. She gripped her pin with its loops of string, and ran into the light and through it to the passage beyond. As she passed the open door, she had a glimpse of firelight and lamplight and gleaming furniture. Here, by the skirting, she could run, and she loved running. Carpets were heavy-going, thick and clinging. They held you up. The boards were smooth and smelled of beeswax. She liked the smell. The schoolroom, when she reached it, was shrouded in dust sheets and full of junk. Here, too, a gas jet burned, turned low to a bluish flame. The floor was oilcloth, rather worn, and the rugs were shabby. She looked up and saw the corner cupboard with the doll's tea service, the painting above the fireplace, and the plush curtain where her father had been seen by the boy. The chair legs were everywhere, and chair seats obscured her view. She found her way among them to the door of the night nursery, and there she saw, suddenly, on a shadowed plateau in the far corner, the boy in bed. She saw his great face turned towards her on the edge of the pillow. She saw the gaslight reflected in his open eyes. She saw his hand gripping the bedclothes, holding them tightly pressed against his mouth. She stopped moving and stood still. After a while, when she saw his fingers relax, she said softly, "Don't be frightened. It's me, Arrietty." He let the bedclothes slide away from his mouth and said, "Arry Watty?" He seemed annoyed. "Etty," she repeated gently. "Did you take the letter?" He stared at her for a moment without speaking. Then he said, "Why did you come creeping into my room?" "I didn't come creeping," said Arrietty. "I even ran. Didn't you see?" He was silent, staring at her with his great, wide-open eyes. "When I bought the book," he said at last, "you'd gone." I had to go. Tea was ready. My father fetched me. He understood this. Oh, he said matter-of-factly, and he did not reproach her. Did you take the letter? She asked again. Yes, he said. I had to go back twice. I shoved it down the badger's hole. Suddenly he threw back the bedclothes and stood up in bed, enormous in his pale flannel nightshirt. It was Arrietty's turn to be afraid. She half turned, her eyes on his face, and began backing slowly towards the door. But he did not look at her. He was feeling behind a picture on the wall. Here it is, he said, sitting down again, and the bed creaked loudly. But I don't want it back, exclaimed Arrietty, coming forward again. You should have left it there. Why did you bring it back? He turned it over in his fingers. He's written on it, he said. Oh, please, cried Arrietty excitedly. Show me. She ran right up to the bed and tugged at the trailing sheet. Then they're alive. Did you see him? No, he said. The letter was there, just down the hole where I'd put it. He leaned towards her. But he's written on it. Look. She made a quick dart and almost snatched the letter out of his great fingers, but was careful to keep out of range of his grasp. She ran with it to the door of the schoolroom, where the light, though dim, was a little brighter. It's very faint, she said, holding it close to her eyes. What's he written it with, I wonder? It's all in capitals. She asked suddenly. Are you sure you didn't write it? She asked. Of course not, he began. I write small. But she'd seen by his face that he spoke the truth, and began to spell the letters. T-E-double-L, she said. Tell. Y-O-R-E. She looked up. Your, she said. Yes, said the boy. Your. Oh, tell your A-N-T. Aunt? Said Arrietty. Aunt? My aunt? The boy was silent, waiting. Aunt L-U... Oh! Aunt Loopy, she exclaimed. He says... Listen, this is what he says. Tell your Aunt Loopy to come home. There was silence. Then tell her, said the boy, after a moment. But she isn't here, exclaimed Arrietty. She's never been here. I don't even remember what she looked like. Look, said the boy, staring through the door. Someone's coming. Arrietty whipped round. There was no time to hide. It was Pod, borrowing bag in one hand and pin in the other. He stood in the doorway of the schoolroom. Quite still he stood, outlined against the light in the passage, his little shadow falling dimly in front of him. He had seen her. I heard your voice, he said, and there was a dreadful quietness about the way he spoke. Just as I was coming out of her room. Arrietty stared back at him, stuffing the letter up her jersey. Could he see the height beyond her into the shadowed room? Could he see the tousled shape in bed? Come on home, said Pod, and turned away. So that's the end of that chapter. Oops, I think Arrietty might be in trouble, don't you? Don't think her dad's very pleased with her. So we'll find out what happens in the next chapter. My questions. So Arrietty went out on her own, didn't she? Questions for the next time are: what did Arrietty take with her when she went out on her own? Question number 2, where did the boy hide the letter? Somewhere in his bedroom. And number 3, what did the letter say? Okay, so have a go at those questions, and then we'll read the next chapter next time and find out the answers. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.